How are you guys doing today? Awesome, awesome. Well, my name is Justin, and I'm here with my colleague Andrew, and we're here with Electrona. You may have seen us a little bit this week, I don't know. But we're here to talk today about building support tools with a purpose. What we're going to kind of be discussing today is how we've taken a set of kind of disparate, separate tools and created kind of a unified system to help us deliver on our services and also become a more efficient team. So let's dive into it. We're going to be focusing on this stack of tools today, primarily around Slack, Jamf Pro, Airtable, and Jira. Now, of course, we do have other tools that we interface and interact with, but this we kind of like to think about as our core set of things that allow us to enable a lot of automation and also do some pretty cool things that you may not be aware of or that you may not have thought about in terms of connecting these systems. So Andrew's going to kind of start us off here and get into our asset management.
Sure. So first we're going to talk about Airtable. Airtable is what we use as our asset management system. So this is kind of a preview of what we utilize within Airtable. So within our organization, we handle onboarding and offboarding of devices as well. So we like to keep a pretty thorough collection of all the inventory of what we have for different clients and be able to sort through that data not only for our needs but for the clients themselves. More often than not, in a picture-perfect world, you'd get this list of assets with a set expiration date on the hardware warranty or the asset lifecycle. You'd automatically order the devices at the end of that date and send them out, but that never is actually the case. There's always some kind of purchasing manager, someone who has to approve one thing or another. So we like to be able to provide these views not only for ourselves, for organization, but to the client as well, and building that out in a way that they are aware and can start to prepare and deal with budget to actually prepare for new devices. But our data that you can see, hopefully you can see in the table here helps to kind of keep everything organized and streamlined between where we know what devices we have within our inventory, which devices are issued and active with the user. We'll even go as far with tracking not only who the current user is, but if it's a device that we're recycling for someone, we'll keep record of past access with it as well, so we can track and see if there's any issues from the past with that person or something. We'll track where the devices are in kind of a pending state within transit, because again, we're doing a hardware life cycle, so at some point, the device is going to be either set on the user's desk because they forgot to mail it back, or maybe in transit, but we want to track that. And we'll also look to track all the devices that have been released through ABM or whatever method needs to be to show that the device is no longer with the organization. So if it does pop up later, like we say, maybe somebody forgot to remove it from ABM and all of a sudden pops back up as enrolled, then we can go back and have record to know like, oh, okay, that one should have been removed, and we can contact Apple and let them know what happened and get the person to get a good device and not enrolled in Apple Business Manager. That asset Airtable also ties into our asset management through some automations. This is kind of early on in the process of how we integrate all these pieces. Within Airtable, we have a form that we can complete. That outbound form does automations into Jamf with labeling that device correctly so that we know that it has been issued and active and who it's going to. And then it also updates our Jira ticket system to know like which device, which model, and who that person's been assigned to, and go ahead and let us know which device should be coming back. The next part of that process is another form that we'll follow through with once we know we've received the device, it's in hand. That'll kick off another automation to both Jamf and Jira. Within Jamf, it'll again reassociate the device with who that person or who it's no longer with, show that it's been returned and inactive, unmanage the device, and then update the Jira ticket to know that the device has been unmanaged, it's back in our possession. It'll close everything out, and then all of a sudden we'll get a Slack notification to know that entire process has been completed. So again, we try to build all of our tools to interface together to where there's one thing that we kick off in one interface, but it updates everything else within our stack that we need to deal with. So it really helps us to kind of clean up their approach and not have to go like fill out our Airtable form to know which device has been received, log into Jamf, unmanage a device, set an attribute to know that it's been returned and it's no longer assigned to someone, go to a Jira ticket, type in a bunch of stuff, close the ticket out, and then send a message in Slack to let everything let everybody know that it's finished up. Instead, we'd rather do one form in Airtable, kick off some automation and scripting, and be done with it. So.
And to add what Andrew's saying as well, this does tie this information in line and writes these comments in the JIRA ticket itself. So this will be tied with the onboarding or the offboarding ticket request. So it's in a unified place.
Next up, we'll talk about Slack. Slack is our primary form of communication, not only internally, but externally as well. Again, being a managed service provider, we have other external teams that we connect with that we have primary points of contact from a technical standpoint, HR, business relations, and such. So we do integrate Slack not only with our external clients, we deal with MDM integration, as well as internal client communications. So what that kind of works and looks like, for the external client communications, it does require the external client to actually have certain licensing that does allow us to tie those together. That's, again, mostly used for kind of single point of contact, quick question answer kind of situations, or if there's been a big major change and we want to get it ahead of it instead of sending an email and a ticket, we can communicate with those external teams fairly easily and remain in one single communication platform with Slack. To preface this too, we are not an email first organization. Email is like one of the last forms of communication internally or externally to actually kind of coordinate within our organization itself. Right. So Slack is very heavily used within our area. One thing that we do with this, with the MDM integration, it does allow us to review through failed policies, so we can kind of keep a ready eye and keep the whole team notified if there's policies failing, if there's group membership changes, if we want to know, like if someone for some reason disabled location services and we know they're going to end up having time-related issues later on, or if they've somehow enabled iCloud, where it may be an organization that we allow it, but we still want to be notified about it. We also have security alerts come in through Jamf Protect. So not only we're not having to look and review a dashboard or wait for an email to come in, we readily have those ingesting into our Slack organization of channels to let us know like when some kind of security event may occur and how we can actually act upon that. We also look at our internal client communications with that. So again, we're not an email first. We're not emailing back and forth. We're not kind of texting or anything. We're primarily communicating through Slack. We built out our Slack setup. It's very similar to the Mac admin Slack in that there's more channels than you would ever want to have to scroll through and look at. And we do have a lot. There's a lot of channels in there, but it's kind of a pick your poison with your communication platform. Some are email. Who in here uses Slack for their primary communication platform? Who's Teams? And who is still just email as their primary communication platform? I'm sorry. So, but it helps us though to keep everything organized in a well kind of clean threaded format so that we can relay information back to one another very quickly and easily. We have very organized channels within there for our clients. So if one thing changes with a client and we're going to move from, instead of letting Jamf be the only platform that handles the encryption keys, maybe we're going to implement Escrow Buddy. So we'll use those client-specific channels, and that's how we can easily let everyone know that this is being implemented for this client. If there's a personnel change and our primary point of contact is someone new, we can use that client-specific channel to alert the entire team. So there's a lot of detail and build-out with it, and it's exhausting, but it's what we have to work with, and we've found that it's kind of the best, quickest approach to be able to communicate with one another through there.
And Chad gave a talk too earlier about migrating systems, so that's a good place to kind of coordinate that communication and stay in line and making sure that we're on top of our tasks and what we need to be doing.
For sure. Yeah, and then we build out platform-specific channels as well, that we try to, again, as we talk about Jira, Airtable, Jamf, and Slack, we have our platform-specific channels too, so we can keep and stay aware of one another within either Jamf available upgrades. If anything changes within Slack and we add new channels, we can kind of communicate through there as well. Here, the screenshot here, we actually ingest RSS feeds directly from Apple too, so like we're not waiting for software update to go through and notify our client to reach out. We're trying to rely directly on Apple and their RSS feed so we can know when new software releases come out, and we're not waiting for a client to be like, hey, this update showed up. Should I apply it? We're kind of already aware and trying to stay ahead of that too. And again, I know this it's a lot to look at within Slack. There's so many channels. Again, if you refer to Mac admin Slack and you go and try to add a channel, and if you went through and added every one of those, I don't know if you'd ever really stop scrolling through the list of all the channels that you would have. And we have a lot in there, but it's built out with a purpose for us to be able to communicate easily amongst ourselves, be aware of all of our platforms, and also communicate with external clients. And that's what we found really works well for us. Yeah, Justin?
Yeah, thanks. So next, we'll talk a bit about Jira. How many people here are familiar with Atlassian and Jira platform or Jira Service Management? Cool. Yeah, so a few of you have heard of it. So, there are many other ticketing systems. There's like Zendesk, ServiceNow. There's a couple of different platforms out there, but, Jira is really at the core of what we do. I would say, that is our primary tool to get work done. And we do use the Jira Service Management piece as our service desk for our end users, for the folks that we are supporting. And not only does this allow us to do client-facing support, but this is also a project management tool for us to track our work as well on the project and engineering side. And we tie those two closely together. On the project management side, we use Jira similar to how software teams may coordinate their work. So we do project sprints, and we set priorities on items that we need to get done within that quarter or that have deliverables with due dates. And we assign tasks, subtasks, and we tie those to service tickets too. So if we have something that comes in on the service side that's set priority for maybe an MDM change or some kind of system migration or upgrade, we can create a project task and tie those two things together as like, hey, here was the root source, here was what came in that prompted us to make this change or to perform this task. And so we can kind of look back and see that history. And for the engineering side, it also helps us build some context as well. So talking a bit about the service desk side. So we support, in our service offerings, since we're a consultancy, we have kind of two primary buckets of customers. We have some that we call our infrastructure customers, who we are doing primarily device and cloud platform management for. And then we have some who are complete customers who are, we're providing that full suite of support for. So we're also supporting end users as well as working with technical POCs. Now, the reason that's important is for the end users that are using the service desk, we have some forms that have multiple options. And one of the things that we're finding from kind of a UX standpoint was, anyone here deal with someone in a panic? Yeah, let's all nod our head. So anyone that's looking for an option to get help quickly is going to go take the path of least resistance. So here you have a form with several options, and I guarantee you most people are going to go to the number one because number one seems like the first place to go. So we identified that trend and decided, there's maybe a better way to take a different approach to this. Cool. So folks were getting to this Get IT Help and clicking this option for anything. Now you see we have request new accounts, we have knowledge base article. Almost no one chose those options, right? People were just looking for help and they're trying to find help at the quickest route possible. So keeping with the software development of keeping it simple and stupid, well, why don't we simplify this? So we start here, but we want to go here. This looks a little better. Just one option. Give them the single point of contact, the single place to click and say, hey, send in your request and we'll do the routing and we'll take care of who handles this on the other end. So we're a bit smaller team, so we're pretty flexible in terms of assigning and making sure that things are getting routed properly. But this actually provided a much cleaner and more streamlined user experience for folks and allowing them to, get help and get it more efficiently.
To kind of build on this too, we've built out we have clients and such that do want a more detailed list of things that they want to present to what their internal people would see. So we do provide options if the client requests it. But again, time and time again, we found when we built out all these different options, the user just, like, if they're taking the time to actually finally go through and submit a support ticket, you know that things must be pretty dire. So they were just clicking, again, the first thing, get IT help, and the most basic form. That form, what you didn't see there, is the form that they actually have to fill out, in which they basically put in a title and give a description, and they would send that on. Like, no matter what we would try to ask for, be it like if they need a new account or emails messed up, we would find they'd get confused or click on the wrong kind of thing and submit a ticket that had nothing to do with what they actually wanted to. So we, again, tried to keep it as simple as possible. Instead of having different directories to go through to support what their general overall issue was, just give them a ticket to click and ask for IT help. And that's all that the user's really thinking that they need, is that it's IT, I need help. Give them one single button to kind of go through and get access that way, or get help that way.
Yeah. So username on the tool?
Yeah. So Jamf Pro is our primary MDM that we use to support clients. We support many others, but Jamf seems to be the strongest foothold, and the one that allows for the best pieces of kind of user tools and enabling that side, especially through their self-servicing option. We have clients where most of which have standard users, so we want to be able to provide a way that they can fix, change, or update their Mac without having to actually call IT, because again, the less that they have to call IT and the more that we can enable them to actually do the stuff that they would want their need to do, we want to try to provide that. We do software installs, so again, it's not a sales pitch, I promise. We develop and manage electronic patch, and so we utilize that very heavily to easily create all the software installs that any user would ever have. So we know, or we have a client that has a default list of applications that they're going to get. There's some that they want installed, but there's also a default list of ones that they just want readily available or that they license and want that user to have. So we take a very heavy approach to make sure that all those softwares are just readily available. The less that they have to contact us to make a request for a software, let's just go ahead and make it available for them, and we'll try to build that out as much as possible. I'll dive into this a little bit more, but we'll talk about kind of customized deployments for software, automated enrollment, and just overall user-facing support for being able to just self-solve issues as they come. So again, user tools and enablement. This is your typical like Jamf Pro self-service view. This kind of gives a quick overview of like what we look to build out for having all kind of assorted arrays of software installs available, installing printers, being able to have them easily do a Jamf policy check and instead of having to be an admin and do a sudo Jamf policy, we just give them a button to click on. But again, this is more around like user tools and enablement. So how we took an approach to what would be very complex for our side from a technical engineering standpoint, but making something as simple as possible for the end user. And I'll kind of dive into some of these here. One thing that we ran into was we had a client who moved away from like an automated backup system, and they just wanted to use Google Drive because it was available to them with their Google Workspace licensing. So they wanted to ensure that all the users had Google Drive open and that it was authenticated to at any given time. So what seemed simple to just make sure that Google Drive's open, running, and authenticated was much more complicated on the back end because Google doesn't give you any kind of, or not too many management options for Google Drive, instead of like requiring it to open, requiring it to be signed into, setting only a business-only address, and ensuring that files are backed up on it. So we took and created a very basic prompt for the user. You could click an option for a URL that would actually tell them how to set it up, that kind of walked them through step by step, or just gave them a simple button to open Google Drive, which would open the app, require the sign-in, and so forth. So again, what looks very, very simple to the end user is actually much more complex.
Abstracting and complexity.
Yeah. So that's really something that we take an approach with on all the kind of user enablement tools that we create. So again, what is a very basic prompt that pointed to a URL and asked them to click on a button was actually much more complex, so we could actually see, this is hard to see, and I'll try to provide a link or updated content to look at this on our GitHub repo, but we would actually check to see, is the user signed in, because we don't really want to do anything if there's no user to check with. We'll check to see if Google Drive is an open, running, active process. If it is, then we want to check to see if it's actually authenticated to. And again, Google doesn't give you much management options to see like or require a user to sign into Google Drive, so we had to go and dig in to see which file actually changed when a user finally did sign into Google Drive. So we're trying to do all this process check to determine locally if the user's actually done this, and if they haven't, here's a prompt to let you know that we would highly encourage you to do this, but we're not really going to bug you to the end like it's going to piss off your user and make them like never call in and say, I keep on getting this prompt. We want to make it occur at a regular cadence to not frustrate, but also encourage them to do what should be done.
And for those who may be a bit unfamiliar, this is the bash script. So what you're looking at.
Sorry,
is,
yes. For us, previously we used Dep Notify for our automated enrollments and kind of user setup aspects. So anytime the user first booted up, created their account, got to a desktop, we're using Dep Notify previously. The problem with that is the user, and even if we white gloved a setup or we just drop shipped and wanted the user to set it up, if you set up with Dep Notify, there's not really any way for you to know what's actually occurring. You get a little bit of text and you get a progress bar that's really kind of bouncing back and forth, but how do I know that something failed? Or how do I know that that actually installed? Like, how do I review and know what had happened with it? And this really became an issue with our kind of white glove setups, and that at the end of it, they're having to open the applications folder and check and see if everything's here, see if this setting got set for the account, so on and so forth. So we went through, created our own enrollment with Set Up Your Mac. We, again, being an MSP, we have to adapt for several clients. So we actually host our policy array through a URL. So we just grab it down with a JSON, and we're easily able to take policies and scope them to different clients quickly and easily. But building out tools like this, again, this is for white glove setup for your own internal IT teams, and actually being able to show like what is happening, what completed, what failed, and giving them a way to actually remediate it after the fact only helps to enable, again, not only your IT team, but your users as well. Because if you're drop shipping this and want to make sure that the user knows what's happening or how long do I have until this finishes, like when can I use my computer, this kind of gives them an actual checklist of things that are going to occur before they get to use the Mac themselves. We also use Set Up Your Mac in a smaller form to actually just, this was a request from a client that they had an engineering department that needed a very specific set of tools, and we didn't want to make them have a policy to click on for every individual software that they would need. So we wanted to give them, again, a clear, concise like prompt to let them know what was installing, if it had completed, and when they'd be able to actually use all the set of software. So again, taking something that would seem small, and we didn't want to make the user have everything to click through. Let's give it in one single prompt and give them a checklist to run through on it.
Right, so we're breaking down these enrollment activities by department too as well. Nudge was something, or still is, something that we utilize within our environments too. Again, we want that whole user enablement aspect. We want the user to feel like they're in control of the endpoint. Nudge allowed us to, again, encourage them to get their device updated. Very encourage them once it gets past the expiration date for when they had to install it, but we want them to still be the ones to actually apply the update. Nobody wants like that Windows approach with like Patch Tuesday. Come Tuesday evening, your Mac or your PC is just rebooting and you're like, I need to use this, I'm scheduled to do this or that. So we wanted to make sure that that user still, they were aware that they had updates that they needed to apply, but we weren't going to just force it on them and just have them reboot their Mac at any given time. This, and the way that we implemented Nudge, still allows them to actually defer it. When they click Update Device, they're actually opening up system settings and actually clicking the update to schedule and apply it when they wanted to, and not having that Big Brother IT aspect of forcing them and automatically pushing it out to the device. So that user enablement feature was key with Nudge. I do wish I would have had more of the code here, and this is something I'll try to get onto our GitHub repo after. But this was something Sam, one of our team members, and I worked on for a client. Within Jamf, you can do the Intune registration for device compliance. That process within Jamf and the self-service policy can be not provide super clear steps on what all that process is. So we'd actually work to create a prompt with Swift Dialog that much more easily walked the user and validated the entire process to ensure that the device was registered with Company Portal, the process had ran and completed and registered the device in Intune, and that everything was set and kosher. So we again, building those tools out, even though they may seem simple for the user to just click a single button, can be really key to make sure that they continue to feel comfortable within their environment. And that goes on with File Vault. Again, we have some users who, or some clients who wish to have an additional account with a secure token, even though we created it after the fact.
This allowed us to prompt the user to enter credentials. We wanted to make sure that they felt comfortable and secure, so we provide a secure password prompt and then pass everything else on to enable all the pieces that we would want. And finally, I know this is a lot, sorry. We built out, everybody knows what happened with LastPass. So I'm sure that more than a few people had to migrate from having LastPass as their password credential tool and moving over to 1Password.
Right.
LastPass, the way that it stores information is not, it doesn't always directly align with the tables within 1Password, but there are tools that allow you to kind of align those exports of LastPass to 1Password. So instead of having the user go through and be upset because when they did an export from 1Password or LastPass and added into 1Password, instead of them being upset that not everything lined up or the URL was missing or this or that, we helped to again implement just a Swift dialog prompt where they could actually add the export into it, and we would do all the magic behind the scenes to actually use like the LastPass command line tool to then import it into 1Password and make sure all the tables would align.
Yeah, and there's actually a Python script that does kind of the cleanup of the data. So when you do that export into 1Password, that will actually translate into the entries being put into correct vaults. So there is a bit of kind of data, like some processing you have to do before that import occurs. So, yeah.
Cool. And yeah,
in typical Apple fashion, we got one more thing. Gasp. Cool. So I did a bit of talking about this last year in Mac Admins. I'm not sure if some of you saw me there, but people. And the reason we're discussing people is because though we've talked a lot about the technologies and kind of how we made them work, what is really kind of integral to all this actually functioning and coming together is building the right team around it. So, you know, as a team, of course, we have folks who have a lot of varying backgrounds. A lot of us are, you know, technically focused, and building that, or kind of making sure that we kind of keep that as the core tenet of what we do is very integral into us being able to build out some of these things. So in our organization, I like to kind of think of like kind of three core tenets that we like to think about a lot, which is, you know, proactive problem solving. So, you know, Andrew mentioned, I think back in the Slack piece where, you know, we like to keep an eye on things and, you know, get alerts for things that are maybe happening in real time for us to maybe even take action before we hear from the client or before they ever notice it. You know, stay ahead of things like Apple update or software releases, so we can, you know, be ahead of the curve and know like, okay, what's coming down the pipe and what do we need to communicate ahead of time. That prompt response and accessibility, you know, keeping things like Jira tied into our Slack instance, so we are notified of a ticket update and not waiting for someone to check their email. You know, we can stay on top of that correspondence and make sure that we are being proactive and responding in real time. And then that collecting feedback and improve. The Slack Connect piece is a great kind of tool to do that. So with the Slack Connect channels, if you're maybe less familiar, it allows you to connect external users to your internal instance. So of course, you know, ticketing is the primary method of contact or maybe getting on the phone with us, but if they can send us a quick Slack message saying like, hey, you know, maybe I submitted this request for this thing and there was something I forgot to leave out, or hey, I've got something that really might be a little bit more urgent or maybe not necessarily ticket worthy, but I'd like to notify you and let you know about what's going on there. Or we can do it vice versa of saying like, hey, you know, we have this thing we are thinking about pushing out or that a change we're looking to make. So we want to kind of quickly get in touch and correspond with you. That's also part of that piece as well. There's other things you can do, you know, to kind of enhance the customer experience, which, you know, setting a higher bar too for as a team for like your junior members. So what I mean by this is, you know, since we're a smaller team, we, you know, maybe have the flexibility or the opportunity for us to like, you know, work more closely and directly with our junior team members and have them be enabled a bit more. And things like that. It's like getting them exposed to things like, being sysadmins within cloud services and helping them build more confidence in those areas, so they're not just using the tools without any confidence, right? Because then that helps them do their job more efficiently and quicker as well.
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an absolute like Mac admin. Like I deal with like the Apple side of things, shell scripting, whatever it is Apple related, I deal with it. The past 3 months have turned into a Jira administrator and learning
Right.
every bit about Jira automations and like the breaking down those barriers between like your teams and like having everyone in a silo. It doesn't work for us. Like we've kind of made sure that everyone stays exposed to one thing or another throughout the entire stack of our support tools. So like again, where I'm spending every day within Jamf or like a shell script or developing anything, I turn around and like flip my hat around, and now I'm all of a sudden a Jira admin and dealing with automations that I never thought I'd have to deal with. So
Like an example of like, the Jira automation could be, we actually recently completed a project where we connected an external client Jira instance to ours. So that actually takes automated actions between the two systems without actually having to, buy a third-party tool to do so. Yes, it took some banging their heads against the wall for a little while, but we finally got that working. So that's just an example of what Andrew was referring to there. Getting that feedback and improvement, I, as you can probably gather, like to talk a lot. We spend an exorbitant amount of time talking with our clients, not simply because we enjoy sitting in meetings, but because we enjoy delivering a great experience for them. The way we're able to do that is doing frequent check-ins, sometimes weekly or monthly by cadence, where we meet directly with the technical POCs or the end users themselves and kind of talk about what's going well and what's not, and pivoting that way. Now we'll go back to our tool set and readjust as we need to as we go along, but this is kind of an ever-evolving practice. So it's not just a prescription of like, hey, use this stack of tools and you'll be fine. It's more of a methodology and a way of doing things above anything else. So that's like kind of the key tenet there with all these things. And I had I forgot my gifts.
that was not a gift. That was just a good picture.
Yeah, my memes. But yeah.
I guess to follow with Justin, with what we do in regards to those biweekly or monthly meetings that we have with our clients, it's always frustrating in IT to know that you're going to have to communicate or reach out to your client or who you're actually having to support to, because if with us being remote, we don't really have that going to a support person's desk and then you see the prairie dog when someone comes over a cubicle wall and they're like, oh, hey, since you're here, oh, hey, by the way, having those biweekly or monthly, like regular cadence calls does allow us to generate that, because you always know that there's that one person who's dealing with whatever small issue that they have. Right. They're going to sit there and grin and bear it and deal with it until it becomes way too big of a problem. Then it becomes an emergency. But having that like regular cadence and having open communication with clients, either through, again, I don't think we have any weekly. That would be tough.
We do have some weekly.
Yeah.
With some of the
bi-weekly or monthly, but yeah, having that regular cadence with your client or whoever it is that you're supporting, especially if you're a remote team, helps to generate that, oh, hey, by the way, I have this kind of issue, and actually like having that communication and dialogue happen to where you can actually support them and not have something turn into an emergency. Instead, it's just a support thing that someone happened to pop in and talk about, and now you get to help them out.
Best of all is, fostering an environment when everyone can do their best work. I know everyone here is in their respective industries and disciplines, and I know things don't maybe work the same as they do for us. But the most important tenet is like constantly thinking about, not only how do I deliver on the work I'm doing, but how do I set the bar and lower the barriers for everyone else, for our team to work better. That's the key takeaway here, I would say. So with that, I think we would like to take some questions if we have any. And don't be shy.
We can try to.
You guys only work
Well, let's get you the catch box because they won't be able to hear you on the recording.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to throw the full length of the room. Go from here.
Do you guys only work with those particular apps that you mentioned, or MDM like Jamf?
No.
So you can work with other MDMs?
Right. So I'm glad you brought that up because what we do is we work with the best tool for the job. So, you know, I'll touch on two parts of that. So, kind of keeping, focus on enabling a technical team. A big part of that is, fostering constant development and growth. Today's tool might not be tomorrow's solution. So, as things change and evolve, we always take a look at what's happening, and kind of seeing what's in the landscape and what others are using, what's most successful in delivering this key aspect of this certain process, or in your specific question was MDM platform. Right now, Jamf Pro is a platform that we've built a lot of competency around, and it's the one we kind of know best. But we've used other platforms as well, and we've also gained some abilities there as well. So no, we are not like you use Jamf Pro or nothing else. Absolutely not. We want to deliver on what's best for the client and their environment.
Yeah, Jamf was kind of the best scenario to kind of showcase how we've looked to build out tools to support from the end user perspective. I think Kanji has their own kind of self-service platform. Right. Same thing. I think Mosel has one. Yep. Intune has Company Portal, which can be much more limited in terms of like what you can do within Jamf. As a benefit is you're able to write a script that does something fairly basic and then present that as user-facing to click on a button for them to do at their leisure. Whereas within Intune, that's not so much of a possibility. So that's why we use Jamf as that example, and speak to that as being something that's more of a user enablement tool, because you actually can present those things that may be complex code or even just a command that has to be ran as sudo. They can't do that if they're a standard user. So Jamf actually allows you to create a policy with that, so they just click on a button instead of having to make them an admin to do it. So that's why Jamf is mostly as that. And again, Jira we showcase Jira because that's our internal tool. We have other clients that use Jira as well, and we do that integration, but we've worked with Zendesk and so on and so forth. But that kind of builds on that part of like not necessarily siloing ourselves into one single platform. Like it's not just Jamf, it's not just Jira, it's not just me or our team dealing with Apple related stuff. We wear a hat of Windows administrators and managing Windows PCs as well. So it's not so much building specifically on those tools, but how you can actually adapt yourself to be more well-rounded and not just stick to those.
Right.
Good, that's what I needed.
Cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Good question. Thank you. Anyone else? I can pull up my Bueller if anyone. Yeah, go ahead. Right here. Yes, please. Only for the recording. That'd be great.
When you talked about the simplification of your ticket routing.
Yes.
Well, for the customer, right? Mm-hmm. But internally, that kind of, I would assume that those. Like you have to have a manual input for triaging the tickets and stuff like that. Excuse me. Do you take that? When do you look for automation in those cases, and when do you is all the automation front facing versus front facing versus back facing to you? Yeah. Or do you have do you try to have the balance somewhere in the middle, and where do you find that balance?
Yeah, great question. We could probably both take this, but I'll start. I would say that automation is your friend, but not your replacement. So we use it as an augmentation for maybe getting things to a faster route. A lot of things are happening on the back end, abstracted away from the user, because in our eyes, I'll use an analogy of going over a speed bump. We should feel like a smooth road. If it feels like there's a bumpy interaction with working with us and it's kind of taking them out of their primary route of what they're doing from a day-to-day basis, I think we're not necessarily delivering on what we're supposed to be. giving them that kind of simplified route helps them just submit the thing and like not worry about it. Not going, oh man, did that get to the right person? Like for the, did that get to the person who's managing cloud accounts
Yeah,
because I need this email set
That
up
that shouldn't be their concern.
Right.
Their concern is, did IT receive this? And that's pretty evident in the type of requests that they have, and we'll handle the rest of the routing and such. But yeah, there's a lot more back-end automation in terms of like what we use within Jira as a platform, because again, when we do anything like stuff that we're going to kick off from our side, we have much more automations built around like labels and assignments and routing that the users, they just don't need to, that's not something they need to deal with. They're a user, they just want help. So what can we do to provide like the simplest way for them to submit a request? Like, yes, there are some times where they may be very detailed, and they like it may be a user who's actually going to go through the different routes and actually submit a support request that's hardware related for a peripheral, and then submit that IT piece that actually has the forms to fill out. But more often than not, it's just going to be they just need help, and so why not provide them the most basic form for them to type out what they need, and then we're going to have that communication with them anyways to get into more detail and ask the needed questions.
And there are two examples I'll kind of give you, just boilerplate ones that are a little bit more specific. Like say we get an onboarding request, we actually leverage labels to have a tag that actually gets applied to that request, and then it shows up in a certain view within Jira. So like it gets separate from the assigned view of general requests, so it's literally completely a different view. And another example is part of that automation we built between the two Jira instances is there's actually a tag, because those requests are directly with the engineering team. So we can tag that with the engineering team label, and it adds the team members who actually would be doing that automatically. And if they make any changes or updates to the request, and even if they close it out on both ends, and then it auto populates the comment in there as well. So that's kind of more specific examples of how that would kind of work. Yeah. Great question. Anyone else?
Anyone? Bueller? No? Cool. Well, we thank you for your time. We'll keep it short and sweet and let y'all get out and enjoy some snacks. But thank you all for coming. And if you have any questions later, feel free to find us. We'll be happy to talk and help out.
Yeah. Enjoy the conference, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.